The morning sun cast long shadows across the front steps of Riverside High School as Hae-yeon Kim stood clutching her backpack. Her heart was beating fast, and she kept checking the small piece of paper in her hand that showed her class schedule. Even though she had studied English for many years in South Korea, being here in Massachusetts felt completely different. "You must be the new exchange student," a friendly voice called out. Hae-yeon turned to see a tall man with gray hair and glasses walking toward her. "I'm Mr. Thompson, the debate team coach. Principal Garcia told me you were coming." Hae-yeon bowed slightly, a habit she was trying to break. "Yes, hello. I am Hae-yeon Kim. Nice to meet you." She spoke carefully, making sure to pronounce each word as clearly as she could. Mr. Thompson smiled warmly. "Welcome to Riverside High. I read in your file that you were on the debate team at your school in Seoul. We'd love to have you join our team here." Before Hae-yeon could answer, a group of students walked past them. One of them, a tall boy with perfectly styled brown hair, stopped and looked at them. "Oh great, fresh meat for the debate team," he said with a smirk. "Brandon," Mr. Thompson said in a warning tone. "This is Hae-yeon Kim, our new exchange student from South Korea." Brandon Mitchell looked Hae-yeon up and down. "Can you even debate in English?" he asked, making no effort to hide his doubt. Hae-yeon stood up straighter. She had won 3 regional competitions back home. "Yes, I can debate in English. I have studied it for many years." Brandon laughed, and the sound made Hae-yeon's cheeks burn. "Oh man, this is going to be interesting. I have studied it for many years," he repeated, copying her accent in an exaggerated way. His friends laughed with him. "That's enough, Brandon," Mr. Thompson said sharply. "Go to class." As Brandon and his friends walked away, still laughing, another boy approached them. He was shorter than Brandon, with round glasses and a friendly face. "Don't mind Brandon," the boy said. "He thinks he owns the debate team just because he's captain." He turned to Hae-yeon and smiled. "I'm Jae-ho Park. My parents came here from Busan when I was little." Hae-yeon felt some of her tension melt away. "Nice to meet you, Jae-ho," she said, grateful to see a friendly face. "Jae-ho is one of our best researchers on the debate team," Mr. Thompson said. "He can show you around and tell you more about how we do things here." As Mr. Thompson walked away, Jae-ho looked at Hae-yeon's schedule. "We have history class together first period. Come on, I'll show you where it is." While they walked through the crowded hallways, Jae-ho told Hae-yeon about the school and the debate team. "Brandon's good at debate, but he's not as great as he thinks he is. He mostly wins because he's aggressive and loud." Hae-yeon nodded, thinking about the competitions she had won back home. She had always won through careful research and logical arguments, not by being the loudest person in the room. Their history teacher, Mrs. Davis, asked Hae-yeon to introduce herself to the class. As she stood in front of 25 curious faces, Hae-yeon took a deep breath. "Hello, my name is Hae-yeon Kim. I am from Seoul, South Korea. I am happy to be here as an exchange student." Some students smiled encouragingly, but she heard a few giggles when she pronounced certain words. She sat down quickly, her face hot with embarrassment. During lunch, Jae-ho invited Hae-yeon to sit with him and his friends. "So why did you choose to come to Massachusetts?" he asked as they ate. "I want to go to Harvard," Hae-yeon said. "I thought spending a year at an American high school would help me understand the education system here better." She paused, carefully forming her next words. "Also, I want to improve my English, especially my speaking." "Your English is already really good," Jae-ho said. "But I know what you mean about the accent. When my parents first came here, people always made fun of how they talked. Some still do." After school, Hae-yeon went to her first debate team meeting. The team met in Mr. Thompson's classroom, which had debate trophies lining the walls. Brandon sat at the front, surrounded by his usual group of friends. "Everyone," Mr. Thompson announced, "this is Hae-yeon Kim, our new member. She was a champion debater at her school in Seoul. Brandon raised his eyebrows. Oh, really? Why don't you tell us about your biggest win? Hyun. Hyun stood up, determined to show them what she could do. Last year, I won the Seoul Regional Championship. The topic was about artificial intelligence regulation. My argument focused on the balance between innovation and safety. She spoke slowly and carefully, but she could see Brandon and his friends exchanging smirks. Could you repeat that? Brandon asked, putting his hand to his ear. I didn't quite catch it with the accent. Several students laughed, but Jae-ho spoke up from his seat. She said she won a regional championship. That's more than you did last year, Brandon. Brandon's face turned red. Whatever. Let's see how well she does in English against real competition. Mr. Thompson clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. All right, let's focus. We have the regional qualifiers coming up in 2 months. Today, we're going to practice impromptu speaking. He wrote a topic on the whiteboard. Should social media companies be responsible for controlling misinformation? Hey Yun, he said, would you like to try first? You'll have 2 minutes to prepare, then 3 minutes to speak. Hey Yun's heart raced, but she nodded. While she prepared her notes, she could hear Brandon whispering and laughing with his friends. She thought about all the competitions she had won back home, all the hours she had spent practicing. She wouldn't let him intimidate her. When she stood up to speak, Hae-yeon focused on Mr. Thompson's encouraging smile and Jae-ho's friendly face. Social media companies should take responsibility for controlling misinformation because they have created platforms that allow false information to spread quickly, she began. She laid out her arguments clearly, citing recent examples and statistics she remembered from her research back in Korea. When she finished, Mr. Thompson smiled broadly. Excellent arguments, Hae-yeon, he said. Very well structured and supported. Yeah, if you could understand it, Brandon muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. More laughter followed. After the meeting, Hae-yeon gathered her things quickly, wanting to leave before anyone could see the tears in her eyes. But Jae-ho caught up with her in the hallway. Hey, he said, don't let Brandon get to you. Want to practice together sometime? I can help you with pronunciation, and you can help me with my Korean. I'm trying to get better at it. Hae-yeon wiped her eyes and managed a small smile. I would like that. As she walked to her host family's house that evening, Hae-yeon thought about Brandon's mocking voice and the laughter of his friends. But she also thought about Jae-ho's kindness and Mr. Thompson's encouragement. She had come to America to challenge herself, to grow stronger. She wouldn't let anyone stop her, especially not someone like Brandon Mitchell. That night, Hae-yeon sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She created a new document and titled it Debate Practice. Then she began typing out arguments, preparing for the regional qualifiers. She would show them all what she could do, accent or no accent. After all, she hadn't become a champion in Seoul by giving up when things got hard. As she worked late into the night, Hae-yeon remembered something her father always told her. Success is the best revenge. She smiled to herself and kept typing. Brandon Mitchell might be the debate team captain now, but he had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks before the regional qualifying debate tournament, Hae-yeon stayed late after school to practice in the empty classroom. She stood in front of a mirror, repeating English words that gave her trouble. She had been meeting with Jae-ho every day during lunch, working on her pronunciation while helping him improve his Korean. The research shows that renewable energy sources will become more cost-effective, she said to her reflection, carefully shaping each word. She had nearly memorized her entire argument for the upcoming competition. A noise at the door made her turn. Olivia Martinez, one of the senior debaters, stood there with a kind smile on her face. You're really dedicated, Olivia said, walking into the room. I've seen you practicing here almost every day. Hae-yeon nodded, gathering her papers. I need to work harder than others because of my accent. You know, Olivia said, sitting on one of the desks, My parents came from Mexico when they were teenagers. They still have strong accents when they speak English. But my mom is a doctor now, and my dad runs his own business. She paused, looking directly at Hae-yun. Having an accent doesn't make you less smart or capable. Before Hae-yun could respond, Brandon walked in with two of his friends, Ashley Cooper and David Torres. "Aw, look," Brandon said loudly. "The exchange student is trying to sound American." He turned to his friends with an exaggerated bow. "Should we help her practice?" Olivia stood up quickly. "Leave her alone, Brandon. Don't you have anything better to do?" "I'm team captain," Brandon said. "I'm just making sure everyone is prepared for regionals." He turned to Hae-yun with a fake smile. "Let's hear your argument about renewable energy." Hae-yun's hands shook, but she lifted her chin and began speaking. "The evidence demonstrates that renewable energy sources—" "I'm sorry," Brandon interrupted, putting his hand to his ear. "Could you say that again?" "I couldn't understand through the accent." Ashley laughed, holding up her phone to record the moment. Hae-yun tried to continue, but Brandon and his friends kept interrupting, mimicking her pronunciation and laughing. Olivia stepped between them. "Stop it. Mr. Thompson will hear about this." "Oh, come on," Brandon said. "We're just having fun. If she wants to be on the debate team, she needs to speak properly. This isn't Seoul anymore." Hae-yun grabbed her backpack and ran from the room, tears blurring her vision. Behind her, she could hear Ashley saying, "This is definitely going on social media." She ran until she reached the school library, which was nearly empty. Finding a quiet corner between two bookshelves, she sat on the floor and tried to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged her in a video post. With shaking hands, she opened it. The video showed her trying to speak while Brandon and his friends mocked her accent. Comments were already appearing underneath. "OMG, so funny. How is she even on the debate team? Can't stop laughing." Hae-yun turned off her phone and hugged her knees to her chest. Everything she had worked for seemed to crumble around her. Maybe she had been foolish to think she could compete in English debate tournaments. Maybe she should just go back to Korea. "Hae-yun." Jae-ho's voice came from the end of the bookshelf. He sat down next to her on the floor. "Olivia told me what happened. She's reporting Brandon to Mr. Thompson right now." "It doesn't matter," Hae-yun said quietly. "Everyone is laughing at me. The video is all over social media." "Then they're all showing everyone what jerks they are," Jae-ho said firmly. "Look at this." He held up his phone, showing her a different set of comments on the video. "This is straight-up bullying. Not cool. Brandon's such a jerk. Acting tough by picking on the exchange student. Hae-yun's arguments are always super smart. Who cares about an accent?" Hae-yun wiped her eyes and read the supportive comments. Jae-ho put his phone away and said, "A lot of people are on your side. Brandon's just scared because you're a better debater than him." The library door opened, and Mr. Thompson walked in with Olivia. When they found Hae-yun and Jae-ho between the bookshelves, Mr. Thompson's face was serious with concern. "Hae-yun," he said gently, "Olivia told me what happened. I've already spoken to Principal Garcia. We're calling an emergency debate team meeting tomorrow morning before school." "I don't want to go," Hae-yun said. "Maybe I should quit the team." "That's exactly what Brandon wants," Olivia said. "Don't give him that satisfaction." Mr. Thompson nodded. "Olivia's right. Besides, I have something important to tell you. I wasn't going to announce this until the meeting. But," he smiled, "I've been watching everyone's progress carefully. I'm making some changes to the team structure for regionals." The next morning, Hae-yun almost didn't go to school, but Jae-ho was waiting outside her host family's house to walk with her. When they arrived at Mr. Thompson's classroom, most of the debate team was already there. Brandon sat in his usual spot, looking less confident than usual. "Thank you all for coming early," Mr. Thompson said once everyone was seated. "First, I want to address yesterday's incident. Brandon, Ashley, and David, Your behavior was completely unacceptable. Principal Garcia and I have decided you'll all serve 2 weeks of detention." Brandon started to protest, but Mr. Thompson held up his hand. "Furthermore, I'm making some changes to the team. Brandon, you're no longer team captain." The room went completely quiet. Brandon's face turned red. "What? You can't do that. Regionals are in 2 weeks." "I can, and I have," Mr. Thompson said firmly. "Leadership isn't just about winning arguments. It's about bringing out the best in your teammates." He turned to Hye-Yun. "Hye-Yun, your preparation and dedication have impressed me greatly. I'm appointing you and Olivia as co-captains for the regional competition." Hye-Yun's eyes widened in surprise. Around the room, several students nodded in approval. Even some of Brandon's usual supporters looked like they agreed with the decision. "This is ridiculous," Brandon said, standing up. "She can barely speak English. How can she be captain?" "Actually," Jai-Ho spoke up, "Hye-Yun has been working with a speech therapist at the community center. Mrs. Rodriguez says she's one of her fastest improving students ever." "That's right," Olivia added. "And while you've been making fun of her accent, Brandon, Hye-Yun has been helping other team members improve their research and argumentation skills. That's what a real captain does." Hye-Yun stood up, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I know my accent is not perfect," she said, looking directly at Brandon. "But debate is about ideas and logic, not just how you sound. I want to help our team succeed, and I will work hard to do that." Several students clapped. Mr. Thompson smiled proudly. "Well said, Hye-Yun. Now let's talk about our strategy for regionals. Hye-Yun and Olivia have some excellent ideas about how to structure our arguments." As Hye-Yun walked to the front of the room with Olivia, she felt different. The shame and fear from yesterday were still there, but something stronger was growing in their place. Determination. Brandon and his friends had tried to break her spirit, but instead, they had made her stronger. She opened her notebook and began presenting her ideas to the team. Some words still came out with an accent, but she didn't try to hide it anymore. She was Hye-Yun Kim, and she had something important to say. Anyone who wanted to learn could listen. Anyone who wanted to laugh could waste their time doing so. The regional competition was coming, and Hye-Yun was ready to show everyone exactly what she could do. The community center was quiet on Saturday morning when Hye-Yun arrived for her speech therapy session. Mrs. Rodriguez, a warm woman in her 50s, welcomed her with a bright smile. "Good morning, Hye-Yun. I heard about your promotion to co-captain." "Congratulations." Hye-Yun settled into the comfortable chair in Mrs. Rodriguez's office. "Thank you, but I am worried about leading the team. Some people still laugh when I speak." Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward in her chair. "Let me tell you something important. When I first came here from Argentina, people made fun of my accent too. Now I help others find their voice. Your accent is part of who you are. We're not going to eliminate it. We're going to make your speech clearer while keeping your natural voice." For the next hour, they worked on specific sounds that English speakers sometimes found difficult to understand in Hye-Yun's speech. Mrs. Rodriguez showed her how to use her tongue and lips differently for certain words, but she also taught Hye-Yun something more valuable. "Listen to this," Mrs. Rodriguez said, playing a video of a famous speech by the Secretary General of the United Nations. He spoke with a clear accent, but his words were powerful and moving. "See, he's not trying to sound American. He's focusing on his message." Hye-Yun watched carefully. He speaks slowly and clearly, but he doesn't hide his accent. "Exactly. Now, let's practice your debate introduction again. But this time, don't rush. Own your voice." When Hye-Yun left the community center, she felt lighter. That afternoon, she met Olivia at the local library to prepare for the state finals. They spread their research materials across a large table and began working on their strategy. "I've been thinking," Olivia said, "we should use your international perspective as a strength. When we discuss global economic policies, you can speak from direct experience." Hei-yun nodded slowly. In my old school, we had to hide our personal connections to the topics. But here, maybe it could work. They spent hours refining their arguments. When Jae-ho joined them later, he brought recordings of famous speeches by non-native English speakers. They studied how these speakers used pacing and emphasis to make their points clear. Look at how she pauses after important points, Jae-ho noted, showing them a video of a Korean diplomat speaking at an international conference. She gives the audience time to absorb what she's saying. Monday morning's debate practice started differently than usual. Hei-yun stood at the front of the room, her note cards ready but not needed. Today, she said, speaking slowly and clearly, we will practice a new way of presenting arguments. Brandon sat in the back row, arms crossed. He had been quiet since losing his captain position, but his eyes still showed his doubt. In international debates, Hei-yun continued, we learn to use our unique perspectives. When you speak about your personal connection to a topic, people listen more carefully. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. Yes, I have an accent, but I also have experiences and ideas that can make our arguments stronger. She demonstrated by presenting an argument about international education standards, weaving in her first-hand experience of studying in 2 different systems. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Mr. Thompson started clapping. That was excellent, Hei-yun. Did everyone notice how she used her personal experience to strengthen her logical arguments? Even Brandon looked thoughtful. After practice, he approached Hei-yun. That was different, he said awkwardly. I've never thought about using personal experience like that. Hei-yun smiled politely. Maybe we can learn from each other. The next few weeks passed quickly. Hei-yun and Olivia worked with each team member, helping them find their own unique strengths. Some were good at statistical analysis, others at emotional appeals. They learned to combine these different abilities into stronger overall arguments. Hei-yun kept working with Mrs. Rodriguez, but now she focused on being clear rather than trying to sound American. She practiced speaking slower, using hand gestures effectively, and making eye contact with her audience. One day after practice, Ashley Cooper, who had recorded the mocking video weeks ago, stayed behind to talk to Hei-yun. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she said, looking at the floor. I was mean to you because I was jealous. You're really good at debate, and I was wondering if you could help me with my research techniques. Hei-yun remembered how it felt to be laughed at, but she also remembered what her mother always said. True strength shows in how you treat others, especially those who weren't kind to you. Of course, Hei-yun said. Let's meet during lunch tomorrow. The state finals approached quickly. The team traveled to Boston for the competition, nervous but prepared. In their hotel the night before, Olivia gathered everyone for a final meeting. Thanks to Hei-yun, Olivia said, we've learned that our differences make us stronger. Tomorrow, let's show them what Riverside High can really do. The competition venue was huge, with teams from all over Massachusetts. During their first round, Hei-yun presented their argument about environmental policy. She spoke clearly and confidently, her accent present, but not hiding the power of her words. The judges leaned forward, listening intently. Round after round, the Riverside team advanced. They used their new strategy of combining personal insights with solid research. Brandon, competing in a different division, even used some of Hei-yun's techniques in his own debate. In the semifinals, Hei-yun faced a tough opponent from Boston Latin School. The topic was international trade policies. When her opponent tried to challenge her understanding of global markets, Hei-yun responded with a clear, powerful rebuttal that drew from both her research and her international experience. While my opponent makes interesting points, she said, speaking slowly and clearly, they missed the real-world implications. As someone who has lived in 2 different economies, I can tell you that the data shows only part of the story. The judges nodded as she continued, laying out her argument with confidence. When the results were announced, Riverside High had won. They were going to nationals. After the competition, Mr. Thompson gathered the team. "I'm proud of all of you," he said, "but especially of how you've grown together. Hei-yun and Olivia, your leadership has transformed this team." Hei-yun looked around at her teammates, at Jai-ho's proud smile, at Ashley's friendly wave, at Brandon's respectful nod, and at Olivia's supportive grin. She had come so far from that first day when she stood nervous and alone outside the school. That evening, as the team celebrated at a local restaurant, Hei-yun called her parents in Seoul. "We won," she said in Korean, her voice full of joy. "We're going to nationals." Her father's voice was proud through the phone. "You didn't let them break you," he said. "You turned their mockery into strength." Hei-yun looked at her teammates, laughing and talking around the table. "No," she said. "I found my voice." The Chicago Convention Center buzzed with excitement as teams from across the country gathered for the National High School Debate Championship. Hei-yun stood with her Riverside teammates, looking at the huge room where hundreds of students prepared for their debates. "Nervous?" Olivia asked, standing beside her. "A little," Hei-yun admitted, "but ready." Mr. Thompson gathered the team for a final meeting before the first round. "Remember everything you've learned," he said. "You've earned your place here. Now show them why." The competition started with preliminary rounds. Hei-yun and her teammates faced strong opponents from California, Texas, and Florida. In each round, they used their unique strategy of combining personal experiences with solid research. Hei-yun spoke confidently, no longer trying to hide her accent, but focusing on making her arguments clear and powerful. During a break between rounds, Brandon approached Hei-yun with a newspaper. "Look at this," he said, showing her an article in the Boston Globe. The headline read, "Massachusetts Debate Team Breaks New Ground with Inclusive Approach." The article talked about how the Riverside High team had changed the way they debated, using their diverse perspectives as a strength. There was even a quote from one of the judges at the state finals, praising Hei-yun's innovative approach. "I was wrong about you," Brandon said quietly. "I thought debate had to be done one way. My way. You showed us all a better path." Before Hei-yun could respond, the announcement came for the quarterfinals. Riverside High would face Phillips Academy, last year's national champions. Their team was known for their aggressive style and rapid-fire arguments. In the preparation room, Hei-yun reviewed her notes with Olivia. The topic was, should governments regulate artificial intelligence development? It was a complex subject, but Hei-yun remembered her experiences with technology both in Korea and America. She knew she could bring a unique perspective to this debate. The Phillips Academy team walked into the room, led by their captain, Cameron Wilson. He was tall and confident, with a reputation for overwhelming opponents with fast, complicated arguments. As Hei-yun began her opening statement, Cameron interrupted. "I'm sorry," he said to the judges. "Could you ask the speaker to repeat that? The accent makes it hard to follow." The judges looked uncomfortable, but Hei-yun smiled calmly. "Of course," she said. "I am happy to repeat my points. Clear communication is important, just like clear rules for artificial intelligence." The audience chuckled, and Cameron's strategy backfired. Every time he tried to rush through his arguments, Hei-yun responded with calm, well-reasoned points. She spoke about how different countries approached AI regulation, using her international background to strengthen her arguments. "While my opponent suggests that strict regulation will slow down progress," she said, "I can tell you how Korea's balanced approach has actually encouraged innovation while protecting people. This isn't just theory, it's happening right now." When Cameron tried to interrupt again, one of the judges held up her hand. "The speaker is perfectly clear," she said firmly. "Please wait your turn." In the final round, Hei-yun faced her biggest challenge yet. The topic was, should global education systems be standardized? It was perfect for her, but she knew the other team would be tough. The room was packed. Hei-yun saw her teammates, Mr. Thompson, and even Mrs. Rodriguez, who had come to support her. She took a deep breath and began her opening statement. I stand before you as someone who has lived this topic, she started. I have studied in 2 different education systems, experiencing both their strengths and weaknesses. But this debate isn't just about my story. It's about millions of students around the world. She laid out her arguments carefully, using data and research while weaving in personal insights. When she described how different teaching methods affected student learning, she spoke from direct experience. Her voice was clear and confident, her accent present, but not hiding the power of her ideas. The other team tried to challenge her understanding of American education, but Hye-yeon was ready. "Yes, I am an exchange student," she said. "That's exactly why I can see both the benefits and problems of standardization. When we only know one system, we might think it's the only way. But there are many paths to learning." In her final rebuttal, Hye-yeon spoke from her heart. "My journey this year has taught me something important," she said. "Sometimes what others see as a weakness can become your strength. They thought my accent would hold me back. Instead, it reminds everyone that knowledge and understanding can come from many places, in many voices." The room was silent when she finished. Then, slowly, people began to applaud. Even the opposing team looked impressed. When the judges announced their decision, Riverside High had won. They were national champions. The team celebrated that night at their hotel. Mr. Thompson made a speech about how far they had come. Olivia hugged Hye-yeon, both of them crying happy tears. Brandon led everyone in a cheer for their co-captain. Later that evening, Hye-yeon found a quiet moment to video call her parents. Her mother was crying with joy, and her father couldn't stop smiling. "We are so proud of you," her mother said in Korean. "Not just for winning, but for staying true to yourself." The next morning, as the team prepared to return home, a young Korean-American girl approached Hye-yeon. "I saw your debate yesterday," she said shyly. "I want to join my school's debate team, but I was scared because of my accent. You showed me it doesn't matter." Hye-yeon smiled, remembering how she felt on her first day at Riverside High. "Your voice is important," she told the girl. "Use it." On the flight back to Massachusetts, Hye-yeon looked out the window at the clouds below. She thought about everything that had happened since she arrived in America. The mockery had hurt, but it hadn't broken her. Instead, it had pushed her to find her true voice, one that spoke with confidence, intelligence, and pride. Mr. Thompson tapped her shoulder. "Harvard called," he said with a grin. "They want you to come for an interview, something about bringing a fresh perspective to their debate program." Hye-yeon smiled. She had come to America to chase her dreams, and now those dreams were becoming real. But she had gained something even more valuable than achievements or acceptance letters. She had learned that being different wasn't a weakness. It was a gift. Her accent wasn't something to hide or change. It was part of her story, and she would continue to tell that story in her own unique voice. As the plane descended toward Boston, Hye-yeon opened her notebook and began writing ideas for next year's debate season. She would be team captain again, and she had big plans. After all, every voice deserved to be heard, and she was going to make sure that happened, one debate at a time.